Part G says, given the diagram below, answer the following questions. Question 1 asks us to name a pair of opposite angles. If you remember, our definition of opposite angles are when two lines intersect, the angles opposite to each other from the point of intersection are congruent. So one possibility for this is looking at this line and this line as they intersect. And that means that C and E, which are opposite each other, are the same, have the same measure, and so C and E are a pair of opposite angles. So we put that there for the answer. We can think about this a little bit further and say if these two lines are intersecting, we can also essentially think of D and A and B together as opposite angles because they're on opposite sides of these intersecting lines, and their measurements, D and A and B added, should be the same value as well. For question 2, it asks us to name a pair of linear angles, and those, our definition is those are adjacent angles that add up to 180 degrees. So to add to 180 degrees, they have to make up a straight line. So an example of this is angle C and D, because those together make up this straight line. So you put C and D as our answer there. But another possibility is E and D, which make up this straight line, or in another case, E, A, and B altogether make up 180 degrees, but they're not a pair. And similarly, A, B, and C will add up to 180 degrees, but again, that's three angles and not a pair, so we'll leave our answer as C and D, even though there's other options. Question 3 asks us to name a pair of complementary angles. Those are angles that add up to 90 degrees. So we can see that angle A has been labeled with this square here, and that means that A is 90 degrees. And that means since 180 degrees minus 90 degrees is 90 degrees, that B and C together must add up to 90 degrees to make this straight line of 180 degrees. So our answer here will be B and C. Question 4 asks us to name a pair of supplementary angles. And these are angles that add up to 180 degrees. That's going to be similar to a pair of linear angles, but in this case, we're not restricted to angles being next to each other. So in this case, we can answer angle E and D because we know they add up to 180 degrees to make a straight line. But again, we could extend this further and essentially think of angles such as A, B, and C together as adding up to 180 degrees. Question 5 asks us to name two congruent angles. So those are just angles with the same measure. And for that, we can say angles C and E again, because we said they're opposite angles, and we know that opposite angles have to be congruent. Question 6 asks us to name a pair of adjacent angles, and those are angles that have a common vertex and a common arm. So in this case, we can pick angles B and C, because they share this arm in the middle here, and they share this vertex, which actually all these angles share this vertex. So there's other possibilities for adjacent angles here. E and D are adjacent, E and A are adjacent, and so on and so on. So there's multiple different answers for some of these questions, but these are some possibilities, and this is how you can start thinking about these angles and the relationships between them in a given diagram.